Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I hope you'll enjoy this live legal education content, and today may be the day I earn your subscription. For today's story, we are doing the case against Chandler Halderson. Chandler Halderson is a 23-year-old individual from the great state of Wisconsin who has been accused of murdering both of his parents and then dismembering their bodies and spreading pieces of their bodies in various parts of the great state of Wisconsin. He's facing top count murder ×2 in addition to other charges. So improper disposal of body, lying to authorities, and some other things. But, facing life. So that's what the story is with Chandler. So yesterday, the trial began with the opening arguments from the prosecution and the defense. The prosecution's opening argument was about an hour and 5 minutes. The defense's opening argument was 13 minutes. Might say something about how much they have respective to say. Not saying you can't do a great opening statement in 15 minutes, but it's not necessarily the most encouraging sign you've ever seen in your life when that kind of thing happens. So in any case, what we're going to do is what Nick did yesterday on his show. And I have seen this video before, so it won't be a fresh react. But I thought what we could do is we could watch it again on my channel, and we could see the case against Chandler Halderson. How good is it? How good is the case on a scale of 1 to 10? Just how guilty is he? I guess we can find out together, right? So let's get started with this by watching the trial of Chandler. All right, let's do that.
Are not evidence. Attorney Brown.
Thank you.
So what the judge just said there is that the arguments are not evidence. The first part of it was cut off. It's not in the YouTube video. But what he said is he finishes off by saying that the arguments from the attorneys are not evidence. So he just read them some jury instructions, and his last instruction was the arguments are not evidence. Okay, fine.
Could I have the screen turned on, Judge? On the left HDMI? While he's doing that, I'll promise you he'll give you a copy of that, by the way. You don't have to remember all of those instructions.
Referring to the
William
instructions.
Brown. I'm the Deputy District Attorney of Dane County. Yesterday you met Andrea Raymond. Together we're the prosecutors in the case. You heard a little bit about how the process worked in jury selection, and you probably thought you were being strung along the whole time, and in a bit you were. Everyone was trying to gauge your knowledge of the case, maybe any preconceived notions you had about the criminal justice system. Ms. Vera asked you a lot of questions about what you would think if she did nothing and sat there, and those were good questions. I won't do nothing in this case because it would be a very short trial if I did. You're going to hear from me, Ms. Raymond.
Now, right away, that's a pretty revealing question, right? Ms. Vera asked you, who is the defense attorney. Ms. Vera asked you, what would happen if I just sat here and said nothing? Right? Hey, how would you feel? You're aware that there's presumption beyond the reasonable doubt. This is true. You're aware the defense doesn't have to put on any case of any kind. This is true. So how would you feel if, I actually did that? How would you feel if I just sat here and didn't do anything the entire trial? How would that make you feel?
Quite a bit. Our job in a case is to present evidence. That means to call witnesses. The judge talked about what evidence is. When we think of evidence, sometimes we think of, especially a murder case. You're in a murder case. You think of the gun. And you'll get that. There'll be a gun. You'll see that. But evidence is so much more. The first thing evidence is the first thing the judge mentioned. Evidence is first the sworn testimony of witnesses, both on direct and cross-examination. When people raise their right hand and they swear to tell the truth, that's evidence. Now, you as jurors can decide whether you believe it or not. Does this person have any bias or prejudice? Do they have anything to gain by what they're saying? Do they have anything to lose? All those things are up to you. But sworn testimony is evidence.
Absolutely true.
Photographs are evidence, videos are evidence, statements made by people involved in the case, including Mr. Halderson, are evidence.
So here we're commenting on Mr. Halderson's, the defendant's, statements. We're not commenting on his silence. We're commenting on his statements. The prosecution can comment on his statements. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. There's some statements from Mr. Halderson. We're definitely going to be talking about those. Great.
Our job is to, over the course of the next couple of weeks, present evidence to show you the path of what we believe happened, which is that Chandler Halderson killed his parents, dismembered their bodies, and hid them around southern Wisconsin. We've been talking about Bart and Krista Halderson. You've heard their names mentioned numerous times by the judges here. That's Bart and Krista Halderson. I'm going to try to use some photos as I talk to maybe guide us along.
Good, always a good thing, right? Start with a picture of the victims. Good strategy, right? You've heard about these people's names who have been killed. Here are the people that were killed. Good idea. Approved.
Some people are more visual learners, some aren't. That's Bart and Krista Halderson, couple in their early 50s, living in Windsor, Wisconsin.
Show them a picture of their house.
In a quiet house, kind of in a quiet town. If you don't know Windsor, think just south of DeForest. Or maybe if you're heading up toward the Dells, when you see the Fleet Farm on your left, if you looked right, that's Windsor. That's the Halderson home. At this point, perhaps it would be best if I told you a little bit about the Halderson family. Bart, the father, Krista, the mother. They have two sons, Chandler, the defendant, and his older brother, Mitchell. Chandler and Mitchell are close in age, but Mitchell's a little bit older. The time this all happened, living in the Halderson home, was Bart Halderson, Krista Halderson, and Chandler. Mitchell had moved out. Mitchell had a job working as an IT person for a local corporation, doing pretty well in life. He's engaged, doing pretty well in life. Buying a house, adult things, growing up. But in July of 2021, it's Bart and Krista living in that house, and their adult 23-year-old son, Chandler Halderson, living in his room. Now, all of the events I'm going to describe, for the most part, take place during the first week of July, from the 1st to about the 8th. So I put up a calendar. This is not evidence in the case, I suppose. It might be. Maybe I'll mark it as an exhibit. But it's to provide some reference, and I put the little flag on there, because if you remember this year, the 4th of July was on a Sunday. Everyone celebrated, of course, all weekend. A lot of places celebrated on Saturday, but the 4th of July was on a Sunday. Now, I'm giving my opening statement. The judge told you opening statements aren't evidence. And in fact, that's the reason you don't have notebooks. I'd like to think so, it's you have to pay attention to me, but that's not true. It's because nothing I say is evidence. So as I say things up here, what I'm saying is what I expect to prove in the next couple of weeks.
Right. So this is slightly more casual than, but there's nothing wrong with it, right? So the more formal version of this would be the evidence will show, or the testimony will show, or you will hear from this witness is the more formal version of this. But there's nothing wrong with this. It's slightly more casual, right? But he's saying it's not evidence, and this is what I expect the evidence to show. It's presented in a slightly more casual way. You know, nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly fine. Yeah.
But what I expect to prove beyond any reasonable doubt is that on July 1st, 2021, somewhere between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m., Chandler Halderson murdered his parents. It's an important date, and it's an important time to remember. July 1st, between 3 and 5. But the story doesn't start there. And this trial wouldn't be 3 to 4 weeks if the trial ended there. The story starts a week later, on July 7th, 2021. Nearly a week after killing his parents, but no one in the world knowing. Chandler Halderson walks into the Northeast Precinct of the Dane County Sheriff's Office and says, "I'd like to file a missing persons report." He sits down with sheriff's deputies, and you'll meet them today. he gives a long story. My parents, they just haven't come back from the cabin. They were there this weekend. We have a cabin up north. It's in White Lake, up in Langlade County. It's pretty far up north, a couple of hours. They just haven't come back yet. They were gonna come back Monday or Tuesday, and I don't know where they are. Who were they with? The deputies ask. I don't know. I helped them pack Thursday night. They must have left Friday early before I woke up at 6. Who'd they go with? I don't know. Where are their cars? Well, they're still at the house. What'd you help them pack? Bottles of liquor, lots of money, tools, silver bars. Why were they going up there? Some people they were fixing a window. Some people there was a plumbing issue, storm damage. The story varied. Sometimes they took just money. Sometimes they took just liquor. But over that day and the next, talking to numerous sheriff's deputies, detectives, including those detectives, he gives this bizarre story of his parents leaving in an unknown car, going to a cabin with an unknown couple, with an unknown amount of money, for really an unknown reason.
Now, see, now I'm going to teach you, I'm going to do my best here to teach you how to be a better murderer in the future, right? For all your edification, right? So this is his first mistake among many, right? So he has to kind of make the police report. There's kind of no way to avoid it because they're gone now, and he should be concerned about that, right? So he kind of has to go to the police about something. But where he's making a mistake is he's making a mistake of being specific about that thing. And so now he has to remember to keep his story straight and the details straight. But you know what makes it easier is if you don't have a story, if you don't have any details. Yeah. So for example, a better way to do this might look like something like, I woke up on the morning of the 3rd, and my parents weren't around the house. I didn't really think about it very much. As I live there, sometimes we don't see each other because we're in different rooms of the house, or they're away or I'm away. I just came down, didn't really see him, didn't really think about it at all. Just went out the door, got in my car, didn't even really notice if my parents' cars were there, didn't even really think about it. Just went about my day. I was doing various chores. In reality, I was burning their body, but I'm not going to make that particularly clear right now. Just doing my various things that I was doing. Maybe went for a hike, went for a walk, just exploring some nature, maybe, possibly. And, I just came home and they still weren't around, and I noticed the cars were still there, and I thought that was really, really weird. And, I started to worry, and the next day they still weren't there. And that's when I decided to come report it to you guys. Because I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So why have a story? Why not just be like, where are they? I don't know. Where'd they go? I don't know. Whose car they take? I don't know. Did you hear them say anything about going anywhere? No. You didn't think that was weird? No, they didn't tell me anything. They didn't tell me anything. I didn't think it was weird that they don't tell me things. They don't tell me things frequently. It's not like they tell me every time they go to the store or every time they hang out with a friend or something. We're independent you didn't think it was weird that they weren't there that morning? Not in particular. That happens sometimes. Sometimes ships crossing in the wind, as it were. And so just don't have any details. Where'd they go? Don't know. Did they talk to you? No. Do you know who they talked to? No. Don't know. Just know they're missing. So, yeah, that probably would have been better. Less details would have been, probably more helpful, all things considered. Also, Stephanie likes to remind me that, for the record, I do not actually condone of murder. I'm not actually giving I'm actually not actually giving instructions nor advice. It's hyperbole. Although legally speaking, of course, because I'm not encouraging anyone to commit murder, right? I'm just describing how you might go about doing it. It's legal because it's just strictly informational, right? It's like, here's something that would probably avoid this problem. Just avoid these specifics and try not to manufacture too many specifics, because if you're specifics, there's fewer things for them to pin you down on in your story. So the fewer specifics you have, so I just came down that morning, Went about my day, came back. I hadn't seen him all day. Woke up next morning, still weren't around. That's when I got concerned. Yeah. All right, let's press on.
So sheriff's deputies do what cops do, which is they ask him, have you heard from him? And he says, yeah. I got a text from my mom. And he did. He showed him his phone. Made it safely. This is from Chandler Halderson.
See, you don't want to manufacture the text. I didn't get a text from my mom. I didn't think about it. I don't get texts from my mom lots of days. It's not like we're texting all the time. After all, we do live in the same house. So the non-existence of the text wouldn't have been suspicious. So why generate the text? Why generate it? There's no reason for it to exist. They just went away. I don't know where. I haven't heard from him.
To Chaz. That's what his family calls him. Not Chandler. They call him Chaz. Made it safely. Can't get anything through, though. Yes, it's packed. Going to White Lake today for the parade. We'll be home Monday night, Tuesday early. I love you lots.
See, this is also the problem with generating these things, because what he didn't know at the time was that the parade, this text is on the 4th, but the parade was on the 3rd. So, right? So they're going to the White Lake today for the parade. No, you're not. The parade was yesterday. July 4th was on a Sunday, but the parade was on the 3rd. So this is another problem with generating text, right? There might be inconsistencies in your generation because there might not be things you know. Also, who knows? Maybe the parade was canceled. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's rained out. Maybe, I don't know. You're generating details that you don't know to be true. So maybe less with that. That would be helpful.
So at this point, the sheriff's deputies don't know what they're dealing with. These folks get up there and decide, now we're going to go to the casino for a few days. We're going to play hooky. Didn't make a lot of sense. They started talking to coworkers and realized these people had never no-called, no-showed, missed work, which they both did on Friday.
See, that's the other thing with generating a story. Your story generation is now conflicting with other people's observations, which you don't know. You don't know what other people's observations are. If you don't have a story, they can't conflict because you don't know anything. So you say, okay, I helped them pack to go to the cabin on a Friday, but they didn't tell their work that they were going, and that's inconsistent with their behavior. So you have an inconsistency. You've created inconsistency where there was none before. So why even do that in the first place? Why just say, I don't know where they went? Then the fact that they don't report to work is more indicative of them disappearing, right? I don't know what happened to them, and you're not saying anything that would contradict with that. So you're not giving them any details that would, is it particularly odd that a 23-year-old adult living with their parents may not necessarily know what their parents are doing on any given day? Is it necessarily difficult to believe that they may not be talking to each other about their plans and all their activities and might just be going about their lives independently? Is that difficult to believe? Not to my mind. So the fact that, hey, I didn't know those details seems plausible. So why create details that you're going to have to back up that might conflict with reality? Why not just don't have details?
They crashed their car? Did this other couple kidnap them? Where the hell are they? But what good police do, and what they did in this case, is they start looking into the people who saw them last, who were with them last, who reported them missing. And in this case, all three of those things, the person who purportedly saw them last, was with them last, and reported them missing, were the same person. There's Chandler Halderson.
Yep.
So what the police did was started to look into Chandler Halderson. This is all occurring in the same 24-hour, 48-hour period. And what they learn about him isn't suspicious at all. He's a Madison College student, MATC. They go by Madison College now, if you didn't get the email. Madison College student. He's about to graduate. He's studying renewable resource engineering, kind of a hybrid IT degree with solar panels, things of that sort. He's about to get a certificate. But things had looked bright for him. He'd recently been working at American Family Insurance. He's working from home like most of us the last couple of years. but he's working a good job at American Family Insurance. And not only was he working a good job, Chandler had just gotten a better job. He got hired at SpaceX. He was about to embark on a career that people in the IT field could only dream of. He's planning to move to Titusville, Florida. That's where SpaceX operation is, down in Florida, with his girlfriend. They'd rented an apartment. They'd bought a car. And not only was this not someone who was antisocial, he was pro-social. He was working with the Madison Police and the Department of Natural Resources on their rescue diving team. He was a scuba diver.
Now here we have a whole, as we're going to learn later in the thing, we have a whole bunch of things that are lies. Now these lies pre-exist the decision to murder, right? So we have a problem with a whole bunch of lies. So the police, you know, you have to cabin your risk and mitigate your risk. So yeah, the police will eventually find out these things are lies. But you know, just because you're a liar doesn't mean that you killed your parents. And you can't really prove I don't know as a lie. How would you prove that, really? You know, as opposed to you saying something specific, like I helped them go to the thing and the evidence doesn't support that, it's a lie, right? So if you say I helped them pack to go to the cabin and there's no evidence they ever went to the cabin, right? That's a lie. We have evidence of a lie because you said something that is not backed by reality. But if you just say I don't know, you know, proving that you did know is a much more difficult proposition. So first of all, it's probably not great to live your life on lies because, you know, you have to continue building more and more lies. And the lie that you probably don't want to go with is the detailed story about what happened to your parents, because anything that contradicts it exposes it and makes things bad. So, you know, just tips, I guess.
Diver, working with the police. The only thing that was a bit odd is he'd recently suffered a head injury. Fallen down the stairs, had terrible concussion, was unable to move for the most part. Had to wear a neck brace. He was permanently, perhaps injured. All of those things threw police off from thinking it was Chandler. He had anything to do with this. And at that point, for all they knew, as sad as it is, Bart and Krista and an unknown couple were crashed into a ditch somewhere between here and White Lake, Wisconsin, dead from a car crash. So they started looking. Deputies are sent up north. The Langlade County Sheriff's Department is searching a cabin. No one had ever been there. It didn't look like anyone had been there at all in years. It was run down. The grass hadn't been mowed. There was no food in the refrigerator. No one had been there. So the police expand their search and they start talking to not only just Chandler, people about Chandler, they start talking to people who were with Chandler that weekend. Specifically, they talked to his girlfriend, a young girl named Catherine. She goes by Kat. And Kat says, I was with him like all weekend. We had a normal 4th of July weekend. We went out to my family's farm. We got a farm. There was a pool. We ate dinner. Chandler was having the concussion issue and he couldn't really move his legs, and so he asked to use their pool the next day because he thought that was good therapy. So the police, what do they do next? They go talk to the person who owns the farm. And they say, was Chandler out here? And she goes, yeah, he was out here on the 4th of July. But you know what? He showed up the next day by himself. He showed up the next day by himself. I told him he could come back anytime, as we just say to people, not expecting they're going to roll into your house the next day. She says he was acting bizarre. Said that he had a doctor's appointment and they'd given him some bad news that he was going to lose his job at SpaceX because he couldn't travel. He couldn't attend orientation to start. And she goes, he asked to use the pool. And of course I said yes. This woman will testify and she'll tell you that she sat in her house for a while, perhaps a bit weirded out that someone had just shown up at her rural farm, but she let him have his space. But about an hour later, she goes down to the pool to check on him. He's not there. No one had opened the pool. No one had been in the pool. But she sees his car. And it's parked out in the field, away from the pool, backed in toward where that grass is a bit longer, and had its hatch up. She thought, boy, that was strange. But she thought maybe he's just on a walk. So she goes in the pool. She said, I'm just going to go in the pool. If you remember that weekend, it's extraordinarily hot. She starts swimming. She says, then I see Chandler. He's walking out of the woods in that area. Now, at this point in the investigation, the police are out there with this woman. They're out on the farm, and she says he walked out over there. And you'll hear from the detective, Detective Brett Baverstock, who was out there. And he'll tell you that his eyes kind of shifted up, and he saw vultures. And I promise the photos are only going to go this far for right now. But the police walked about 20 yards into the woods, and in that pile of debris, under dozens of sticks, bushes, and dirt, they found Bart Halderson.
Now, this is just bad, right? This is bad. You want to avoid shitting where you eat, as they say. So, of all the places to dispose the body, the farm of the girlfriend's parents is not ideal for what should be fairly obvious reasons. It's not like there's any shortage of woods in Wisconsin. Why these woods and not, any other woods raises some questions. Why would you do this in a place where people are going to know you're coming and going and take note of it? Why not just drive, on some trail somewhere where no one's going to particularly notice you and, drive off the road a little bit and, just use those woods? Why these woods? Leaving the body in these woods is not great. Doesn't show a lot of forethought. So there's that. I think that was a mistake.
Now, when I say they found Bart Halderson, I need to explain that. They found a human torso. Someone had crudely chopped off the head, the arms, and sawed off the legs in the middle of the thigh, leaving the underwear on and the beginnings of the pants. They removed the sticks and brush over a course of a few hours. They brought out doctors from the medical examiner's office to make sure everything was done appropriately. They rolled the torso over. There were gunshots in the back. This man had been shot in the back and chopped up. At this point, the farm, beautiful farm, cultivated for years with wildflowers, kind of an Eden of sorts.
I do like his painting a picture,
turned
right?
into a crime scene.
Little purple prose there,
Police
bringing up to
swarmed
life
the
the
place.
farm. Nice touch.
Drones were in the air, cadavers, dogs were on the ground. Everyone's looking through absolutely everything they could, but it's a farm. There's a million places things could be. But one detective said, look at that in the woods. Is that a garbage can full of a tarp? It was. And I'll tell you that tarp was taken to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab eventually. Bart Halderson, Krista Halderson, their blood is all over it. Another
Bury the
detective
tarp.
said, that spot where Chandler was walking out of the woods.
Bury the tarp. The tarp is presumably what he took the bodies there in to prevent blood from getting like in his truck and stuff, which, okay, fair enough. The use of the tarp itself is a good idea. Or here's an idea, bury the tarp. Or even better, just take the tarp with you and dispose of it somewhere else. Put the tarp in, just a standard trash bag, nothing special. Or you could wash it down, because it's a tarp, you could wash it down with a bleach solution. Bleach does a fantastic job of destroying DNA. So depending on your time and depending on your ability to get access to various tools, you could clean the tarp up with bleach. You still want to dispose of it after the fact, by the way. It just gets rid of the DNA on the tarp. So you don't want to have it around. But yeah, you could clean it up with bleach and get rid of the DNA on it. And if that doesn't work, you could put it in some sort of trash bag and just throw it into a dumpster like anywhere. If you can't do that, then bury it somewhere not near the body. That'd be good to create a disconnect. But yeah, leaving the tarp near the scene is not good. You want to not do that. Ookie.
There's an oil barrel there, like an old fuel tank with a hole in it. That's right where the car was parked. So she peeks her head in. And that's what she sees. Broken saw blades, hand saws, scissors, tree loppers, all of them tested by the state crime lab, all of them covered in human flesh and blood.
Again, you really don't want to leave the murder tools behind. Again, where possible, bleach to get rid of the DNA. You know, you can just use soap and water to get, and then DNA and bleach to get rid of the DNA. Take them with you, put them into a bag, put them into a dumpster. You know, don't keep the murder tools at the crime scene. This is not ideal. Yeah, no.
Of Bart and Krista Halderson. The farm was searched extensively, and I'll tell you that some months later, things were even continuing to be found up to this fall. In October, the homeowner, the person who owns the farm, was tearing apart a barn trying to clean it. And there in a barn about 100 yards from where Bart Halderson was found, the murder weapon.
Again, don't leave the murder weapon behind in the barn in the same place as the murder. The classic, of course, is just to throw it into a river. You pick a river of choice, just throw it over a bridge. You know, maybe not the most ideal solution, but it's a classic solution for a reason. Of course, you could do things that are more interesting if you want to. A really good idea is you could to take a file and push it down into the barrel and basically file out the lands and grooves of the rifling, so it makes it much more difficult to match the firearm to the rifle shots that fired it, right? Because normally the way they do it is by matching the lands and grooves on the bullet to the barrel of the gun. So if you take a file and you shove it down the barrel of the firearm, sufficiently many times, you can actually destroy the lands and grooves and makes it much more difficult to track. Also, of course, possibility of thermite to just burn the thing apart. That would work. Or hacksaw it into pieces, that kind of thing. These are all possible choices. Yeah.
Behind a bunch of boards on the side of the barn. At this point in the investigation, the police knew they needed to start talking to Chandler. He's seen coming out of the location where his dad's body was, just brutally.
Stephanie, who tries to save me from myself, as always, says that I should stop giving advice on explaining DNA destruction or evidence destruction. Again, I'm not encouraging anyone to do any of these things. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just telling you here's how you might go about doing it, which is perfectly legal. It's just giving instructions. There's nothing illegal about giving instructions on how to do a thing. It's like, I know that bleach kills DNA, so you could use bleach to kill DNA. I know that the rifling of a barrel, it can be traced basically on the rifling. So how do you destroy the rifling? Well, you could use a file. You could use thermite. You could use things like that would help chop it up into pieces to help make it harder to find, so forth and so on. Don't leave it at the scene. So these are just, I'm just trying to apply principles. And it's like, well, here's things that went wrong. But Stephanie says I should stop doing this. YouTube idiots will flag it. Okay, well, let's just make it absolutely clear to the YouTube people once again, because we actually did run into this problem. Let's make it absolutely clear to the YouTube people that I am in no way encouraging anyone to do this. Right? Please don't commit murders. Right? Please don't commit murders, and please don't destroy evidence and all the rest of it. But it's like, well, here's some mistakes he made along the way. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Chopped apart. tools. The cutting instruments are found there. So they do what police do. They bring him downtown. But they ask him, and he's at the house, and they ask him and his girlfriend to come downtown with them. And they do. And that girlfriend, Kat, is in one room, and Chandler is in another. Chandler,
Typical separation of suspects.
For over an hour, meets with police, and again regurgitates this odd story of his parents with this missing couple in a random car, going places that no one really knew. Or Kat, in the other room, she's vomiting information to the police. Literally vomiting at times, but also vomiting information in terms of she has her phone out. She's giving them pictures. She's providing every single detail she can because she'll tell you when she testifies. She's one of these people that watches these crime shows. And she knows when someone's missing, you got to exclude the people closest to him first. And she thought, that's what we got to do. Chandler didn't have anything to do with this. I didn't have anything to do with this. We got to get to the people who did. And the first step.
They're obviously going to look at the people that are closest because it usually is them. Well, no, usually, but more likely than any other one. So they're going to look at the people who are closest. So who's closest to the mother and father? Presumably the children. It's probably the most likely suspect. So we're trying to reduce our risk pool over here. So, you know.
Because we got to exclude us. She didn't for a second think that Mr. Halderson had done anything wrong. She thought she was with him most of the weekend. And I'll tell you right now, Kat did nothing wrong. Kat was an unknowing, unwilling accomplice.
By the way, for people are asking, how do I know this stuff? It's from reading a lot, including a lot of legal cases where these things are discussed. How do I know about police tactics? Because I read the Reed manual, which was the classic on the subject. How do you do police interrogations? The Reed method was popular and still is used somewhere. Like, how do I know? Because I read the book. It's like, how do I know about like improvised weapons? Well, because I read the Army Field Manual. I read like the Anarchist Cookbook because I think it's interesting. You know, I read things, and the knowledge gets stuck in my brain, and then I can give you the knowledge that I read in my brain because it's interesting. You know, so reading is power.
To some of this, but she did absolutely nothing wrong. And she'll tell you, she liked Mr. and Mrs. Halderson. There were the normal disputes you'd have with your boyfriend or girlfriend's parents. Maybe you want to go out a lot and they don't let you. Maybe you want to hang out more than they don't want to. But she liked him. Her phone is full of messages between her and Mrs. Halderson. Friendly in all respects. Kat meets with police not just once, but multiple times. And in one of these meetings, she says, you know what was weird? Is this weekend, when I was with Chandler, while his parents were at the cabin, I left the house early one day, on Saturday, in fact, Saturday, July 3rd. And she says, he told me he was going to do chores that morning around the house. But when I looked at my Snapchat, I saw his location was in a weird spot. If you don't know, on Snapchat, you can set it up so that other people can see exactly where you are. A GPS tracker on you at all times, if you will. Chandler had that set up with his girlfriend.
Yeah, so good strategy here, by the way, is to not have your cell phone on you, even if this wasn't a problem, because cell phones ping towers, as he's explaining. And he also had his GPS information shared with them as the thing, right? So just turn off the phone. Just turn it off and leave it at home. And if anyone asks, where was your phone? That's where you go, oh, the power was out. I forgot it at home. No, I forgot it at home. Didn't want to go back. I guess the battery ran dead. So it was off. You know, why not? I mean, you're guessing, right? Well, I didn't have it on me. I left it at home. Maybe the power died. I don't know. So yeah, if you don't have your cell phone on you, then you don't get pings from towers. You don't get GPS data from various apps, things like that. You know, you don't want to have this thing that is a major tracking tool that is such a foundation thing for all the police investigations ever at this point. You know, you don't want them to be able to get anything from the records, so don't let the records get created.
And she goes, it was so weird where he was. I took a screenshot of it on my phone. And that's what it showed. Chandler was saved as hubby in her phone. That's perhaps a term of endearment between two folks dating in their 20s. But she said, at 8:58 in the morning, when he was supposed to be doing chores on Saturday, July 3rd, I thought it was strange that he was in what appears to be a forest on the banks of the Wisconsin River near Prairie du Sac. The police took that. They identified immediately where that location was, just based on looking at it. That's a bridge. Couldn't be hard. Out they go. The drones go up, the dogs go out, the search team starts searching. Very quickly, and I promise this is as far as the photos will go, they find the remains of Krista Halderson. Now, when I say Krista Halderson, I have to qualify that as well. We found her legs. One complete leg, then somewhat farther away in another bush, a foot, a thigh, but the same pattern.
I feel like it's just kind of sloppy to leave these things just out in the open. Either bury them or put them into just, again, a trash bag and then just put them into a dumpster. Would be also, of course, with the lye. Lye is particularly good with, helping to dissolve bodies. And there's always the pigs. If you happen to know where you can find some wild pigs, that's ideal too, because pigs will eat anything. So yeah, this is just leaving the limbs out in the open for people to find and stuff is not really the greatest ideal.
Crudely cut apart.
Zafel says, what if you need directions to dispose of the body? If you don't bring your phones, you could get lost without Google Maps. They do make maps in paper. You usually can buy them at a gas station. Paper maps that show the way that the roads intersect. Paper maps. Yeah.
What appears to be handsaws, axes, things of that sort. No more of Krista Halderson that's identifiable to her will ever be found. She's just those two legs. At this point, the police thought, this is just a strange location. Why would Chandler be out there? He'd been out there before. And they started talking to people, including girlfriends of his in the past, friends of his, and they say, yeah, Chandler really liked this location out on the Wisconsin River. He'd go there all the time. It's where he'd go swimming. When his friends came into town, that was the secret swimming spot. And one friend even said, you know what? Last year, he sent me a picture while he was out there. Kind of shirtless, hanging from a tree with a machete. I don't know. Didn't have a lot of significance at the time when the police saw it, but eventually someone realized, the tree looks unique. Interesting V pattern right there. The hollowness of the tree as it goes down. The way in which 5 of those branches branch off. And eventually one of the detectives realizes why. Something clicked. It was the exact location he did.
Okay, this is again a don't shit where you eat thing. Okay. Again, if you're disposing of a body, you don't really want to be somewhere that you have an affiliation with. This apparently is his spot that he goes to on somewhat of a regular basis. I assume he'll hear witnesses from this. He is familiar with this spot. He is associated with this spot. How about picking any other spot, like any of them? Not spots you're associated with. That would be good. Why use the spots you're familiar with? Because, when the police are investigating you, they're going to look in the places that you're associated with, right? Where are you familiar with? They're going to ask you and all your friends and anyone else, hey, where does he spend his time? And they might eventually find this place even if they don't have cell phone data, right? So even if they didn't have cell phone data to locate it, they might as part of their investigation, talk to a friend and they're asking, like, where is he hanging out? Does he have any favorite spots or anything? And they might identify this spot without cell phone data and then go there and find the body stuff. So what you want to do is you want to pick a space that, you don't use. It's Wisconsin. There are plenty of woods. Plenty of woods. Just pick literally anywhere else. Places you're not familiar with, or places that there's no particular association between you and the place. Anywhere is fine. This is sloppy.
Ditched his mother's remains. That's about 100 feet away. So obviously, it shouldn't come to anyone's surprise, at some point Chandler was arrested. In fact, he was arrested on July 8th, 2021. When you're arrested for a lot of crimes, you go to jail, you get booked in, and not much more happens investigation-wise after that. They have what they need. But of course, that's not the case in a murder investigation, especially something like this. So Chandler's taken to jail, and the police start searching. When I say searching, you're going to hear about searches of the house, searches of this farm, searches of this property. You're going to hear about searches of landfills and ponds and ditches all across Dane County. But one of the things they started searching was, what was this guy doing on his phone that weekend?
See, the phone is the way that 90% of this is done these days. Phone and social media. Tracking your phone by the towers it pings, or GPS location, or any of the number of apps which track your GPS location. Phones are, and people just posting their own crimes to social media because they're idiots. So the phone is a major investigative tool these days. Major investigative tool. So, don't take a phone that's associated with you. If you really need to take a phone with you for some reason, then just buy a burner with cash. And then once you're done with it, dispose of the phone. Break it in half, Breaking Bad style or something. Throw it into garbage bins, whatever. Yeah, you don't use a phone, don't have a phone. If you need one, then just use a one-time burner that you pay for with cash. And go from there, I guess. But, don't keep a tracking device on you as you're committing the murders is probably a good idea, just all things considered.
And oddly enough, most of what they found was nothing. Either Chandler hadn't Googled anything all weekend, except for the 8th, or he had deleted his search history. You'll never know. But remember, he was arrested on July 8th. Taken to the police station, and that's where they told him, hey man, we know what's going on. So meaning, while he was still on his phone on July 8th, he was still telling everyone his parents were missing. Not just the police. This kid was standing in his front lawn giving media interviews to all the local media outlets about the cabin and the unknown couple and the unknown car.
See, this is all mistake. This is a mistake that's forced at this point. It's a forced mistake because of previous unforced errors. His mistake, in large part, or at least a major part of, there were several major mistakes. But one of the major mistakes was by having a specific story. Because now he has to remember that story, and he has to give the details of that story, and he has to give it faithfully, and he has to, if he doesn't know anything, he can just say, I don't know. I don't know. When was the last time you saw your parents? Well, I saw them on, let's say the 2nd, or let's say I saw him on, the evening of the 2nd. The murder happened on the 1st. Let's say I saw him on the evening of the 2nd, that Friday. No, because maybe they went on Friday day. Because, they went on Friday. Okay. So the last day I saw them was the 1st. We're at that Thursday. Last day I saw him was the 1st. And when I woke up on 2nd, the Friday, I just was going about my routine, doing things. I didn't see them in the morning. But, we're all adults, sometimes crossing ships on the sea. Sometimes we don't see each other. Most of the time we do, but it's not unusual for us to not, for dad to be at a store or mom to be at the store or them to be in different rooms or something. And we just don't happen to cross paths because we're all independent adults. And so, you know, I didn't really think about it, and I just went out and did all my stuff for the day. And when I came back, didn't see them. I kind of thought maybe I was a little bit weird, but didn't really, you know, thought it was a little bit weird, a little bit. I was wondering where they were. And then when I woke up on the next day and the next morning, they still weren't around. That's where I started to really worry. And that's when I came to police and told you about it. I was like, did they say they were going anywhere? Not that I remember. Do you remember them talking to anyone? No. Did they say anything about any plans or things? No. Did you see them packing? No, not that I recall. Right? Just you don't have any details. You don't have any details. So there's nothing really to cross-reference. So, again, not encouraging. Just describing. Right? These, you want to, if it's harder to catch you in lies if you don't have details to compare against. When you have details, it's easier to catch you in lies because those details are wrong. Right? And you can't necessarily manufacture the details because you may not know them. Because things might have changed. For example, you didn't know that the parade was on the 3rd instead of the 4th. So when you manufactured that text message, you manufactured a bad message because it had information that was wrong that you didn't know. But if you just don't manufacture anything and it's just a whole lot of I don't know what happened to them, I'm really worried about them, you know, it's a better position. So don't manufacture the story that you didn't need to. Don't take your phone with you. Turn it off. Use paper maps. Don't shit where you eat. Don't keep the tarp near the body. Don't keep the weapons near the body. Figure out somewhere else to put them. And so forth and so on. Some of the lessons we're learning here from the misfortunes of others. Let's press on.
He was going door to door in his neighborhood. My parents are missing. Can you help me out? Do you have any security cameras, by the way? And you'll hear from these neighbors. Some of them were so weirded out by what was going on that they secretly recorded those conversations. One of them, you'll hear, was a man who'd only been retired as a detective with the City of Madison Police for about a month. He recorded his conversation with Mr. Halderson. But while he's doing this that morning, what's he Googling? This is what he's Googling. Body found, Wisconsin. Woman's body found, Wisconsin. Wisconsin dismembered body found. We'll come back to the next two.
Wisconsin dismembered body found is a little telling. Body found, maybe. Dismembered body found, that's a little specific now. Why are you looking for specifically that? Do you know something we don't know? Yeah. It's a problem. Also, again, you probably want to do this in a window from an incognito window. And have you considered using a VPN, like the VPN from our sponsor, to help hide your data on the internet? Yeah. Okay. Let's press on some more.
Dead body found in Wisconsin. Body found in Milwaukee River.
Don't Google your own crime
He's
yet.
Searching for whether they found his parents. And you'll hear in this case, he's starting to search because he's starting to get worried because the amount of police in his neighborhood has been ramping up and up and up because unbeknownst to him, they're finding his parents' remains. And you'll hear that while this is going on, while he's Googling these things, he's frantically calling police officers. Hey, why are there more cops in my neighborhood? Calls this guy, Brian Shunk. He records him. What's going on? There's more cops. Did something happen? Did you find something? The middle ones, State versus Peter Capuzzo. Probably means nothing to everyone. It meant nothing to me when I first saw it. The name rung a bell, and I wondered why. Not only does it show he Googled State versus Peter Capuzzo, it showed that he clicked on a link on the Wisconsin court's website and read something. What he read was a legal case, much like this one is the State versus Chandler Halderson. The State versus Peter Capuzzo, though, was a case that made it to the Court of Appeals based on some legal technicalities about a man who dismembered part of his family members and threw their bodies in the river.
See, again, this is a little bit problematic. You're Googling something very specific. That's a lot of specific, man. That's a lot of specific. You're Googling case law dealing with a guy who murdered their families, dismembered their bodies, and threw them into a river. Kind of close to what you did. Kind of revealing. You know, that's kind of specific. So maybe don't go searching for case law that is directly describing what you did. Would be good. Yeah.
So at the same time, Chandler Halderson is going door to door in his neighborhood, crying about his parents being missing, talking to the local news, telling sheriff's deputies, signing documents saying they're missing. He's conducting legal research to get himself out of today, so that today never happens. Now, when I started with that calendar a while ago, and I said the police were initially thrown off because of one thing, and that was this text message from Krista. And it's real. I'll tell you, that text message is in all the search warrant returns from US Cellular. It's on the phone that we were able to search. We're not able to search every phone, but some of them are. Made it safely. Can't get anything through, though. Yes, it's packed. Going to White Lake today for the parade. Be home Monday night, Tuesday. Love you lots. Sent on the 4th of July. So the police started looking into that. And the first thing they found was White Lake. The parade was on July 3rd. Remember, the 4th of July this year was on a Sunday. So everyone celebrated on Saturday. So they started thinking, well, how the hell did this message get sent? So they searched the Halderson home, where Chandler was. And in the garage, under a shelf, in a shoe, wrapped in aluminum foil, was his mother's phone, along with her driver's license.
Don't keep the phone. Don't keep the phone. Just get rid of the phone. Yeah.
Police would later subpoena the records from US Cellular, the cell phone carrier that covers Chandler and the family. And they would look into what cell towers were being used when that message was sent. If you didn't know, all of you probably have cell phones. At any time, your phone is pinging off of different cell towers. It's not always the same. As you sit here, half of you might be using one tower and half of you might be using another. It's based on the workload of those towers. You'll hear about that. But it's generally an approximate area of where you are. That message on July 4th, Krista there's in pink, Chandler's in green. The message was sent from the Halderson home on July 4th.
See, you're generating data and it's generating bad data.
So at this point, the investigators began to wonder, and perhaps you're beginning to wonder how the evidence will come out. How does this happen? How does this kid, with everything in the world going for him, promising new jobs, school, a girlfriend that loves him, willing to move across the country for him, or even physically, a kid who just suffered this major concussion, was unable to use his legs for the most part. How does this happen? And what you'll learn, it happens because none of these things are true. He wasn't going to Madison College. He wasn't studying renewable resource engineering. The people at American Family Insurance, they'd never even heard of him. There's no indication he'd ever even applied for a job, much less had any job at SpaceX. The apartment he told his girlfriend he'd rented and the car he'd bought, none of that was real. The Madison police, they don't even have a scuba diving team.
Oops.
Neither does the DNR.
Oops.
And this concussion he apparently suffered, he did go to the hospital. You'll hear from the doctor who was there. Said, yeah, he came in, he reported that he hit his head falling down the stairs. I diagnosed him with a mild concussion, gave him a neck brace on the way out, told him he could use it if he needed it. But none of the things that Chandler reported to other people, the leg weakness, his inability to move, drive, travel, none of that was real.
So yeah, we have a pattern of him lying, a pattern of him making falsehoods, which goes to show, yeah, that when you're making specific statements, this is part of a pattern of conduct. So that probably makes an exception, and the judge has said it's an exception to the prior bad acts because it's part of a pattern of conduct. So yeah, so that's a problem. Now this all kind of was already in the mix. There was nothing he could do about that at this point. But it's like, well, if you're going to make that decision to murder, you don't want to make it any easier. So, you missed a couple tricks along the way that might have helped. Not encouraging murders, just saying, maybe think about it a little harder.
And given what you're going to find out in this case, you may conclude at the end of it, he never suffered any fall at all. What you may conclude is that it was all made up. Now, police started looking into all of these lies. Because how does a person who looks so promising, was able to convince so many people of his success, how are you able to keep this up? How are you able to catfish your family, your girlfriend, your brother, your friends? And they started to find things around the Halderson home in the email accounts of Bart and Krista Halderson, in the email accounts of Chandler Halderson. When they talked about American Family Insurance, the first big lie Chandler was making up, again, the people at American Family Insurance, you'll hear them testify, they're directors of human resources. You never worked there, never worked for any of their affiliates, never worked for any of the companies that are associated with them. Chandler had been claiming to work there for a year, but he never had any money. And his father was an accountant, so his father would ask him questions pretty much daily. Why don't you have any money? Why haven't you paid any rent? And Chandler spun an amazing web of lies. First it was, well, I'm a salary guy, but they were accidentally paying me hourly, so they just held my paychecks until they fixed it. Then it was, well, I gave them the wrong direct deposit info. Then it kind of shifted eventually. And he said, well, they were going to pay me, but now the amount is so much, they got to pay me so much money that when they deposited it in the bank, they thought it was fake. And police started to find emails like this. This from Tom Selznick, a guy at American Family Insurance, a Northeast remote human resources guy. Describing this, you're registered as salary, but you're making hourly. And these emails would go back and forth with Chandler and the HR person, and eventually he'd forward them to his father. But in the way a parent looks at their child as maybe telling the truth is not the way that you as jurors have to look at this. You, like the police, maybe have to take a more critical look at emails like this. And for one, notice, why is the guy who works at Human Resources at American Family Insurance using a Proton Mail generic email address?
Proton Mail is I don't know if it still is, but it at least was at one time a particularly good, secure email source. So our 23-year-old had some idea, right, of using secure email stuff, but he could have faked the domain headers or something, so could try it harder.
Why is the guy who's the human resources manager spelling the word resources wrong?
That I believe.
Saying he's the human recourses manager. It's comically fake. He emailed himself back and forth, trying to explain why he didn't have any money, and he forwards it to his dad. Now here's where the story gets maybe a little more complex. Having a fake job solves a lot of riddles in your life. No one's hassling you to get a new job. No one's hassling you to do chores all day. The problem is, if your dad works from home, if he was an accountant, for instance, which he was, and which he did, you actually have to wake up early every day and go to work. So there he was. Messages between Bart and Chandler. Hey, are you up for your meetings? Yeah. Over and over again. So Chandler woke up. But he had nothing to do all day because his job was pretend. And so he sat on his computer playing video games. And I'm not against people playing video games. I'm a guy myself. People play video games. But video games, if you don't know, and some of you are of an age where you do, and some of you are an age where you don't, are a much more social thing than they used to be. When you play video games, you don't just sit on Nintendo 64 and play Mario by yourself. You're playing role-player games with people from around the world. And who's up early in the morning when Mr. Halderson had to wake up to attend his fake work meetings? People in the military who are stationed overseas. They speak English, they're American, but they're on a different time schedule. They're on his time schedule. Most people here probably play video games at night during weekdays. But every day, Mr. Halderson was able to wake up and find a group of friends to play video games with online, one of which was stationed in Germany. This friend was a guy named Andrew Smith. Now, Mr. Smith, Mr. Halderson became kind of best friends. They would talk all the time. They communicated in this video game all the time. And Mr. Smith, he'll testify, he's coming up here, lives down south, he's back in the US. He'll tell you that Chandler really liked an SKS rifle when they play some of these shooting games. It was just something he liked. Not a big deal, there's nothing wrong with that. But this past summer, about a month before the murders of Bart and Krista Halderson, this online friend, Andrew Smith, comes to visit Mr. Halderson and in fact stays at the home with Bart and Krista. This is the picture of Mr. Smith in that perhaps crudely designed yellow shirt. That's Mr. Halderson. It's the only photo we have of them on that visit. You'll learn that Mr. Smith had gotten out of the military. He was done with it. But you also learn that he really likes guns. Like, he really likes guns. And he knew his friend liked SKS rifles. So when he visited him this year in June, he brought with him a gift. The SKS rifle that was found about 100 yards from Bart Halderson's body.
Poor man's AR, but it will do great.
Now, you'll meet Mr. Smith, and you'll
so
probably
actually a pretty clean-looking
SKS,
to be honest.
After meeting him, he's not really probably a paperwork kind of guy. And so when he gave the gun to Mr. Halderson, he wanted to document that he transferred the gun, but he wasn't going to fill out any paperwork. So he just took the serial number of the gun, he put Mr. Halderson's driver's license next to it, and snapped a picture on his phone. There's a clear picture of that. But that serial number matches the gun found in the barn.
That'll work, right? We got a picture. We got a picture of his driver's license with next to the serial number of the gun that's in the barn, to associate it with him at the place that he was found visiting, where the bodies were disposed. Are you seeing some issues here, guys? Didn't think this went all the way through.
His body. And before Mr. Smith left, he decided he would gift his friend something else, which was about 400 rounds of high-powered ammunition. Now, you'll hear from Mr. Smith. Despite maybe his bizarre actions and maybe his bizarre statements he may make, he's not a suspect. Police proved he was in Texas at the time all of this happened. Another unknowing accomplice to Mr. Halderson's crimes. So at this point, Mr. Halderson's working a pretend job at American Family Insurance. He's not getting paid. His father, who's an accountant, is kind of on his case about it. And he's got to figure out something else. And the best way out of your pretend job is an even more pretend job. So around May, going into June of this past year, American Family wasn't going well. So Mr. Halderson decided to get a new job. He's going to be an astronaut. I work at SpaceX. This is messages to his girlfriend. I have a good feeling about SpaceX. I have a follow-up interview for Florida tomorrow. Shoot, sorry, I got the job. I have training next week over the computer and leave June 11th and start June 14th. He didn't give himself a lot of time, but what he gave himself was an escape hatch. He could move. He could end the lies that he had going on in his life about being a rescue scuba diver and working for American Family Insurance by simply moving to Florida. That presented with it one major problem, which was that job, which was also make-believe, would pay absolutely no better than the last job that was make-believe. So in late June, as he's supposed to start the job at SpaceX in Florida for Elon Musk, something happens in the Halderson family, something real. There's a change. Remember when I started off and I said there were 2 sons? His older brother gets hospitalized. That's real. It happened. Got diagnosed with diabetes and was having some complications. He's doing great now. Mr. Halderson uses that as an excuse to delay starting at SpaceX. It was a stroke of good luck for him, a stroke of bad luck, of course, for the family, but a stroke of good luck for him. But that only gave him a couple of weeks. So his brother, who's doing really well in life, engaged, house, real job, making a lot of money, suddenly he's in the hospital, being doted over by his family, by his mother. People care about him. So roughly a week later, when Chandler Halderson needs to think of a new lie to get out of the SpaceX lie, guess who ends up in the hospital? Being doted over by his mother and his family with a supposed neck injury. This is Father's Day of this year, in late June. That's Bart Halderson in the middle, Mitchell on the right. Of course, Chandler wearing a neck brace that no one told him he had to wear on the left. Now, around this time, Chandler started telling people an extraordinarily bizarre set of claims. That he had a brain bleed, a hematoma, that he had spinal damage, that he needed his head drilled open.
Pretty serious.
That he had inability to use his legs at all. Couldn't drive. People had to do that for him. That he had nerve damage, that he needed to get a colostomy bag. But most importantly, he couldn't go to Florida. The doctors had told him he couldn't fly. Of course, that's not true. You'll see his medical records and you'll see his doctor testify. So suddenly this man, who was, for all intents and purposes, disabled, was being doted over by his family. People were making him meals. You'll see notes his mom was leaving for him. Call this neighbor if you need anything. She'll help you out.
I mean, this is a little bit sad at this point because it kind of reminds me of my own mother and stuff my own mother would do. My own mother would do this. She'd leave me notes and she'd make me things and she'd say, call this person if you need help. And this mom who seems to be a good mom and loves her son and wants what's best for him, and he killed her. That's sad. I don't think I like the defendant very much.
Couldn't drive, couldn't work, couldn't do chores. Now, a bit of a preview and a fast forward. This guy who's wearing a neck brace nearly every day in late June 2021 would have no problem just days later carrying large bags of ice out of gas stations to chill his father's cut-up body in a freezer. And you'll note, no neck brace. And in fact, you'll note in this case, Chandler Halderson is never seen in that neck brace again after July 1st, 2021, when he kills his parents. So the job lies are over for Chandler in his life. American Family Insurance, don't worry about that because he got this new job at SpaceX. In SpaceX, I can't go because I'm hurt. It was a perfect scenario. But there was one last lie that Chandler had to get out of. And that is he had told everyone he was going to MATC for college and that he was about to graduate. And you'll hear there's a hint of truth to that he was going there at one point. In fact, there's a hint of truth to all of these lies. He did go to MATC for like a semester. He failed out. But he wasn't going there anymore. And the parents were starting to grow suspicious. And we knew this because when we searched the house, we started to find notes on Bart Halderson's desk. Bart Halderson was one of these guys who prints his emails. I don't know if any of you print your emails, but some people, they get an email and they print it out. That was Bart. We find one. It's an email between Bart and Krista, detailing a conversation that he had had with Chandler's advisors at MATC. Supposed to meet with someone else, so we met with this guy, Daniel Spieth. Chandler's going to get a solar certificate. He wasn't. He's registered for fall classes. He wasn't. He's in the IT program. He wasn't. All of these things, line by line, none of them true. But Bart Halderson talked to this person. So police honed in on something. That line. When I talked to the advisor, he sounds just like Chaz on the phone. And he gives this number. That is, of course, because Bart Halderson, when he talked to Chandler's college advisor, was just talking to Chandler, who had bought a burner phone, cheap phone from like Walgreens that you can buy with no service carrier. And police know that because they searched Chandler's bedroom, and in his desk drawer, they found that phone.
Yep, that's good.
Now, this kept going. The lie about going to MATC or Madison College was the most extensive. There were emails, dozens, if not hundreds of emails going back and forth between supposed advisors at MATC and Chandler, and then he'd forward them to his dad from people like someone named Alyssa Brandt, 64. Sometimes Chandler would spell Brandt, B-R-A-N-D-T, sometimes just with a T and no D, depended on the day. But they all had the @Gmail address, not @madisoncollege.edu. And you'll hear from the people at Madison College, their people have real emails. They don't use Gmail. But it was over and over again. Alyssa Brandt was one of them. You heard about Daniel Spieth, also @Gmail. There was someone named Aaron Hoover, also @Gmail. In this one, Chandler's getting upset. I have to have a call with whomever's in charge within the next 30 minutes. I have been a student for over 3 years, and I will be treated fairly. Of course, he's yelling at himself. All of these were fake. Back and forth to himself, and eventually to his dad. The Halderson parents had to have been growing extraordinarily frustrated. Kid wasn't getting paid. He was injured suddenly. His college transcripts aren't coming through, so he can't get a job. So police looked at that original note again. They saw something interesting, which is in this sea of fake people, Daniel Spieth, Aaron Hoover, Tom Selznick, Alyssa Brandt, there was one name that stood out, Omar Job. And that name didn't stand out because it was fake. It stood out to the police because it was real. That is the only real person on any of these emails. And what we've discovered in this investigation is in just the day and a half prior to being murdered, Bart Halderson, Chandler's dad, called MATC and pretended to be Chandler to try to finally get some information on what's going on. Just as any of you could call any doctor and pretend to be your kid, you know their name, their social security number, their birthday, you can get through. You can get through those minor security things. Bart called MATC, said, I'm Chandler, and I want some answers. And for 17 minutes, Bart Halderson, just before his murder, talked to a man named Omar Job. Omar Job is a entry-level customer service guy at MATC. He's got no skin in the game, doesn't even really remember the call, but it was recorded for customer service purposes.
Nice.
And Bart Halderson questions Omar, and he's very mean at first, because in his mind, he'd been getting screwed around for a year on where his son's transcripts were and what degree program he was in and why he hasn't graduated yet. But toward the end of the call, Bart asks Omar Job, hey, do any of these people work there? Alyssa Brandt, Daniel Spieth, Aaron Hoover. And he's told no, they've never worked there. And in fact, they haven't. And he says, that'll be it then. That'll be it then are the last recorded words of Bart Halderson alive.
He's a good storyteller.
Bart Halderson shortly
we're 47 minutes into this opening, and he's doing a very good job keeping everyone engaged. So he's got a good story, and he's rounding through it, and he's got engaged, and he's making you follow along the way. This guy's pretty good. He's who I want to be when I grow up. Oof.
After that, sends a text message. Text message that ultimately sealed his fate, which was a text to his own son. And it says, "I spoke with Omar Job." Now, what happens over the next 24 or so hours is a bit unknown. Homicide investigations are a lot of unknowns because the two people who are the victims, who maybe know the most about what happened, are of course dead. But there's not much verifiable information that happens over the next 24 hours. It's also unknown if Chandler even knew who Omar Job was. Of course, he wasn't going to MATC, so why would he know who some lowly entry-level customer service guy was? He wouldn't. But Bart Halderson did. And when you look at Bart Halderson's work calendar that he maintains at his accounting firm, you see something quite interesting. Remember at the beginning, I said I wanted you to remember a date and a time, which was that the Haldersons were killed between 3 and 5 p.m. on July 1st, 2021. Guess what was on Bart's calendar at that exact time? He was supposed to have a meeting with the people at MATC with his son. So he's supposed to go to MATC and have this meeting at 3 o'clock on July 1st, 2021. Of course, that meeting couldn't happen because he wasn't going there, and none of the people were real, but Bart Halderson knew that. Bart Halderson knew that. And so Chandler had obviously figured that out at this point. There was no way out of this one. You can't get out of this lie. And so the next day, Chandler Halderson wakes up on July 1st and starts messaging his girlfriend. 7:26, I hardly slept. 7:27, stuff hasn't been going well for me lately. Just trying to plan for the next thing to fuck me over. 7:51, I had a great future planned. It's falling apart. 1:04, just 2 hours prior to the murders. I overheard they might go to the cabin with their friends, but I don't know.
Yeah. There's
so
your
somewhat
moment.
of a full.
There's your moment, right? 1:04 p.m. I overheard they might go to the cabin with their friends, but I don't know. This is evidence of a plan to murder. Because this is the story he's going with, remember? That they went to the cabin. And he's putting together the plan. He's starting to execute the plan, if not earlier. He might have started to execute the plan earlier, but 1:04 p.m. I overheard they might go to the cabin with their friends, but I don't know. Planning, preparation, intent, execution. Yep.
Full circle at this point. That's the moment Chandler Halderson decides to kill his parents and engage in this bizarre story of them missing at a cabin with an unknown couple in an unknown car at 1:04, July 1st. Now, shortly after this message, just about an hour and 10 minutes, Bart Halderson's getting ready to go to MATC for this meeting. Perhaps to confront Chandler. Perhaps Chandler's going to confront him. Bart texts Chandler, "I'm ready whenever you are."
Bart texts Chandler, 2:10 p.m. I'm ready whenever you are. To Chandler. 1 o'clock, 1:09. Text message to the girlfriend. I hear they're going up to the cabin. 2:10. I'm ready whenever you are, son. Yep.
That's about 50 minutes prior to when he was killed. Those are the last words ever recorded of Bart Halderson. His phone is never used, really. Again, he dies at some point. He never goes back to work. No one ever sees him. The neighbor.
I have to be honest at this point, man. I was having a better time when I was coming up with ways to get away with murder, because now it's just sad. You know, at least then I was able to have some fun. I mean, it was dark fun, It was dark fun, but at least I was able to have some fun with like, hey, let's look at the stupid things he did. Ha ha ha. Here's some ways he could have gone around those problems, right? It's a little dark, but I was able to have a little fun in the darkness. And now it's just sad. Now it's just sad because I have this message at 104 saying, you know, my parents are planning on going over to the cabin, and the message from Dad at 210 said, I'm ready whenever you are. And, you know, the trigger is about to be pulled. This is sad now.
The neighborhood he lives in, riddled with security cameras, never see him again. I'm ready whenever you are. What the evidence will show in this case is that sometime after the I'm ready whenever you are message, and probably just around 3 o'clock when he was supposed to go to this meeting with MATC, Bart Halderson was shot in the back multiple times with a high-powered rifle.
Pretty good bet, right? The thing in the calendar was marked for 3 o'clock. The dad is texting him at 2:10. So probably happened sometime between 2:10 and 3 o'clock. Yeah. Seems, yeah.
And after shooting his dad, Chandler texts his mom. Dad's phone died. Text or call me. And get sewed on your way home. I have an extra hour of work. You know he didn't have an extra hour of work, but he was delaying her getting there because the evidence will show he needed to move things around, prepare for what he was about to do when she showed up. She responds, I can, smiley face.
And get me soda on the way home. Mom replies, I can, smiley face. I don't like the defendant very much.
Those are the last words of Krista Halderson alive. Shortly thereafter, around just after 5, neighborhood security cameras, the Haldersons didn't have one, but the neighborhood, a lot of people did, show Krista pulling in, getting out of the car, walking in. She's never seen again until her legs are found out by the Wisconsin River. But just after killing his mom and his dad, the evidence in this case will show that Chandler went on his phone. If you go on your phone, I don't know if any of you have ever taken a note. You can take notes on your phone. iPhone has an app called Notes. We got some raw data, and I'll put it up here in a second. I won't put the raw data because it's a bit challenging to see. But Chandler creates a note about 5:11 that day on July 1st, probably minutes after killing his parents. And the note reads, weekend chores, H2O2 lemon. H2O2 is the chemical name for hydrogen peroxide. You'll hear from people in this case, it's essentially a household cleaner to clean up blood. Lemon, it deodorizes things. Mixed together, it's a pretty cheap cleaning product you can have at home. So Chandler writes a note after murdering his parents, H2O2 lemon. Door handles, move your shit upstairs, get a job, and clean the floor. He then does just that. Spends the afternoon cleaning the house, eventually jumps in the shower. We know he's in the shower because his girlfriend and him FaceTime when they're in the shower. No judgment, but that's what happened, and the girlfriend took a screenshot. We know he's in the shower. They say they're good nights, and Chandler says, I'm going to bed. But he doesn't. He goes to gas stations. He's carrying out large bags of ice. Because what Chandler had done that night is what you all probably suspect by now. He had dismembered his parents, or at least started the process, and had to fit them inside of freezers that were in the Halderson home. And you'll see some of these freezers, they're cleaned, but there's still some evidence around. That night, I'm not going to show many photographs for a little bit, just because I think you deserve to.
H2O2 lemon. Hi, Billy Mays here with OxyClean. Gets everything out of the carpet, into the matting, into the padding. OxyClean. Get those bloodstains right out. It's not even fun anymore. Lame.
Kind of be eased into some of the things you're going to see. That night, what appears to have happened, what the evidence will show, is Mr. Halderson took items from around the house and began cutting apart his parents. Saw blades covered in Bart and Krista's blood. An axe, Bart and Krista's blood. Hand saws, things of that sort, covered in Bart and Krista's blood. He cleaned the house as best he could, and you'll hear about that. But still, blood spatter found of Bart and Krista's blood around the house. And he had a plan. It wasn't a well-thought-out plan, but he had one. And that was he was going to burn the remains in the family fireplace there in the house.
Good.
So it's July 1st. And if any of you remember, 4th of July weekend's pretty hot this year. People in the neighborhood thought it was a little bit weird that so much fireplace was going on. They smelled stuff. One person, this neighborhood's full of retired cops, but one retired cop said, I smelled like a barbecue, smelled like a pig roast. And he said that just not knowing what it was at the time, talking to the police. And that night, a neighbor who had a security camera behind the Halderson home, way far away, was able to catch something. Because it was pitch black at night, he was able to catch just a little glimpse of all the windows in the Halderson house. We have an expert that's going to come in who works with video and light analysis. And he's going to tell you, he was able to figure out which window that was. And the window it was that he was looking at in that camera footage that kind of just piqued his attention was the window by the fireplace. And for many hours over the course of that night, the light flickered, came on, died down, on, down. But in the early morning hours the next day, he'd been up all night doing this. Because you'll learn, you really can't burn human remains. Your home fireplace is not going to get hot enough to do that. It takes an extraordinary amount of heat. If you go to like a crematorium, you're inducing it with oxygen, chemicals, not a residential fireplace. But eventually, in the middle of the night, the fire started going well. It appeared that air was being pumped into it, and you'll see when they searched the Halderson home, there was in fact a fan found right next to the fireplace, next to a tape measure, trying to make sure the remains were the right size as they went in the fireplace. But that light at one point grew and grew and grew, and it got very bright in one room. And then all of a sudden, the kitchen light came on, and then all the lights went out. I don't know if anyone's ever taken a hot Pyrex pan out of the stove and put water in it, or dumped hot water on your windshield on your car in the winter, but it explodes the glass. The evidence in this case will show that what happened was the fire had gotten out of control, burning these human remains. Human fat was rendering out. It was igniting. So Chandler threw water on it.
Yep.
But when you throw water on your residential fireplace, you break the glass.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. Just above that broken glass panel, which is clearly shattered, you see the paint kind of bubbled off from the heat. This is in the search of the home some week later. The fireplace is clearly used. The police noticed something interesting about this photograph, which is, despite being clearly used, the logs are rebuilt. Someone had cleaned out all the ashes and rebuilt it. Clean logs, newspaper, one burnt piece in the middle. But what stuck out to police right away was that little rock right there.
Mm-hmm.
They thought, what is that? You'll hear from the people who collected this evidence. You'll hear from an arson specialist from the Department of Justice, a guy named Bill Boswell, who come in. You'll hear from a forensic anthropologist, a doctor named Cristina Figueroa Soto, who will tell you, we were all interested in what that was because it was out of place. So they pulled it off and they put it on one of these fancy police deals. And the forensic anthropologist took one look at it. And And she said, oh, this is a human skull.
Great.
He had
That's
burned
great.
his parents' heads in that fireplace.
Okay, again, tips to murderers, I suppose. First, don't recommend the trying to burn them in the fireplace for all the reasons that he just said. That's not great. And two, if you're going to ignore that, you might want to make sure that when you're cleaning it out to get the bits of the human skull, to not leave that around. That's not ideal. Yeah.
Later, the police would go through the ash trap of that fireplace, and they would find human remains.
Yeah, of course they
Facial
are. That's one of the
bones,
reasons you don't want to do that.
The knee
Yeah.
bones, which, because we found Krista's legs, by deduction, had to be Bart. All in
Knee
the
bones
ash
connect
trap
to the leg bones.
of that fireplace. They were all cataloged. Now, burnt remains can't be tested for DNA. There's no biological material left. But they're able to tell it's human based on the structure of the bone. And you'll hear from the anthropologist who will talk about that. So that's what happened on July 1st. Now, you're going to hear about all of those days in between Bart and Krista dying at 3 o'clock on the 1st, all the way through the police report. But to summarize, Chandler stayed up all night that night of the 1st. Obviously, things weren't going well, burning his parents' remains. So the next day, perhaps not having slept, he walked into Fleet Farm at 7:21 a.m. to buy a tarp. He's on video. He knew his girlfriend was spending the night that night, so he spent the whole day cleaning. But he's sending her text messages, which you will see throughout the day, asking her to bring him hydrogen peroxide and a mop, because he still needed to clean up. The next day, Saturday, July 3rd, 2021, his girlfriend leaves early in the morning. That's the day she snaps that picture of him out by the Wisconsin River dumping off his mom's remains. He spends the rest of the day hanging out. But when he goes home and says he's going to bed that night, this young man who supposedly couldn't drive or carry heavy objects, his phone records show that he's up near the Wisconsin River in Portage, as if you're driving the interstate up to the Dells, right when you cross the Wisconsin River, off in the state land there to the right. For about an hour, in the middle of the night, the police tried to search that area. It was impossible with the currents. Whatever remains were thrown in there are lost forever. July 4th, 2021, this is the day he texts himself. Spends the day with his girlfriend's family, goes to their farm to use the pool. That's the day he says, hey, can I come back tomorrow? Goes to some fireworks. He's living a normal life. No mention of his parents. The next day, takes out the garbage in the morning. Who knows what was in that garbage can? We've thoroughly searched the landfills, but it's impossible to find anything. But he took out the garbage. He goes out to the farm to supposedly use the pool, where he's seen walking out of the woods. Cell phone tower records prove that he was out there on the farm. Remember I told you he told that person that he was having trouble at work and school and having a bad doctor's appointment. He never went to any doctor's appointment that day. Phone records show he never talked to any doctor. It was all a ruse to be able to go out in the woods and hide his father's body. The next day, not much happens, because Chandler was up all night. Again, that light analysis shows all night, the garage light on and off. The garage, of course, being where we found some of these tools, the axe covered in blood. He's cleaning up. At 4:30 in the morning, for no apparent reason, he drives around the city of Madison. There's no idea what he did there. But he's not doing much. But people begin questioning him about his parents. He just says they're late. The person most worried, perhaps, is his girlfriend. She thought that was unlike them. The next day, he drives back to the farm, throws a bag of bloody rags into their garbage can that's out by the street. And at 11:22, he texts his girlfriend that he's finally going to the police. We know that bag of rags came from his house because they were in the Target bag his girlfriend picked up from Target, and she did the curbside pickup. So her name was printed on the outside. It was when she brought him hydrogen peroxide. He filled the bag with bloody rags and left it at the house.
He left
The next
the bag.
day, He starts Googling body found, Wisconsin dismembered body found. He's walking door to door asking about security cameras in his neighborhood. And at 4 p.m., they take him downtown and they arrest him at 6:41. So that's the story. That's why you're here for a couple weeks. Like I said in the beginning, a lot of cases end with the murder. This one, it's just a small piece of the puzzle. None of the things that happen after and none of the things happened before make any sense without knowing the murder happened on a specific day at a specific time. But the evidence in this case you'll find is overwhelming. Chandler Halderson killed his parents on July 1st, 2021.
Yeah.
He cut up their bodies with axes and saws and knives. And he didn't even give them the dignity of having a funeral or even a final resting place in one piece or together. Their remains were scattered across Dane County, in public land, on farms, in garbage cans, in rivers, and perhaps every ditch is a possibility in this county. You'll find the evidence in this case is overwhelming. Now, over the next couple of weeks, I'll make you a couple promises as your prosecutor in this case. I'm not here to waste your time. But of all the constitutional rights we talked about of Chandler, he has them. I want you to respect them. There's another one that you should know, which is this is the only time we get to have this trial. You get one trial in the United States of America, and I have to do it right. So if that means calling a lot of witnesses, I apologize in advance. If it means calling experts to say things that maybe you already know, I apologize in advance. But I'm going to do my job right as your prosecutor. Second, you're going to see terrible photographs. There were approximately 5,000 photographs taken in this case. You're going to see maybe total a couple hundred of actual body parts, maybe a couple dozen. We have scoured those photographs and tried to remove ones that are just horrible to see because of the conditions the bodies were in, because of insects and maggots and things of that sort, and instead are trying to only show you photographs that help you understand how the remains were hidden, where they were hidden, how they were dismembered. To the extent possible, we're using cleaner photographs that were taken by the Dane County Medical Examiner. I promise you, I'm not trying to pull on anyone's heartstrings. I'm not trying to make this overly emotional. You might feel emotional. I suspect many of you have never seen anything like what you're going to see in the next couple of weeks. But I promise to do my best to limit the amount. And lastly, I promise to just ask questions, a lot of questions, because you're the jury in this case, and you deserve to hear absolutely everything. It will be a struggle. You'll get sick of walking back and forth to these jury rooms. You might get sick of each other. I hope not. But it's an important task. What happened here shouldn't happen, but it did. And so in a couple weeks, when I stand up here and Ms. Raymond stands up here, I'm going to ask you to deliver a verdict of guilty, to finally bring some much needed truth to Chandler Halderson. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Brown. Counsel, Attorney Brown, could whoever's giving the opening come up? We don't have to, we can do this without going off. We just want to discuss time. Okay, perfect. Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our morning break at this point. And what will happen is Randy will take you back. You'll go to your respective rooms. You'll have at least 15 minutes. We'll come back and continue. Go right ahead.
So, yeah. So that was an hour and 7 minutes. Pretty good. And now they're taking a 15-minute break, which means everything that the prosecution just said has 15 minutes to seep into their mind. So, yeah. Let's review the evidence, shall we? Let's review the evidence, shall we? Well, There was the gun, which was found in a place with the body that we know was his because of photo ID with the serial number, and we know about the phone messages with the phone and the phone in the drawer and the mother's phone and in the garage and the shoe with the aluminum foil, and we know about, you know, him getting the ice and tools, and we know about the lies and the confrontation on the lies. We know that at 1:04 on the day of the 1st, he's sending a text message to his girlfriend, I hear they're going to the cabin. We know at 2:10 his father texts them that they're ready to go. We know he texts his mother, says, can you get some soda for me to delay her? He says yes, with smiley face. Mom comes home. Kill her. Chop up the bodies. Try to put them into the fire. The skull is left behind. We know that from eyewitness data, he was on the farm on the day of the 5th, I believe that is. Seen going in and coming out of that woods where the body was found. Eyewitness account. We know from the cell phone records he was there. The tools were found there. Tarp was found there. We know he bought a tarp. We know that the other body was found in a spot that he apparently really liked. Took people to on the regular with the special tree and stuff. So he's very, very guilty. He is extremely, very all the guilty. He is all the guilty. He is all the guilty. I saw someone in chat said it, and I've had the same thought, which is, can the jury just literally stand up and say, we're ready to deliver our verdict? We're good now? Because I'll tell you what, I'm good. I'm good. That's a lot of shit, man. This ongoing deceptions and caught in a lie he can't recover from. Shoots his father in the back. Delays the mom. Kills her. Puts the bodies into the family fireplace. Goes, gets ice. Tarp. Disposes of it on the girlfriend's farm. We have an eyewitness of him being there in the spot where the body was found, coming out of the woods in that spot. The tools that were used, found there. The firearm that was used, found there. Firearm we can trace specifically back to him based on the serial number from his photo and that serial number. The other body found in the area with the tree that he liked to frequent and stuff. Making false statements to the police. The girlfriend with the GPS data. The cell phone tower logs. The burner phone in the drawer. Mom's phone in the house. He is all the guilty. He is, in fact, all the guilty. But, my friends, we would be remiss if we didn't hear the defense's opening argument. Now, the defense's opening argument would have to be the most persuasive opening argument since the beginning of time to overcome this. So let's see what the defense came up with. I believe there's 8 counts. 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of destruction of the body, 2 counts tampering with evidence, count of lying to the police, I think, for the false police reports. So I think there's 8 counts. Not that it matters that much, but yeah. Okay, great. Let's listen to the defense.
Thank you. Please be seated. Attorney Dorrell.
Thank you.
If you would, please.
Chandler Halderson did not murder his parents. He is not guilty of those crimes. Chandler Halderson is 23 years old, young man. He likes to play video games, play with his dogs, hang out with his girlfriend, and he lived peacefully in his parents' home. He was just a normal kid. He is a normal kid. So what did happen? What happened to the Haldersons? What happened in that Halderson's home? Remember those questions. They won't be answered at the end of this trial.
The prosecution has an answer for which they have some supporting evidence.
Remember those questions at the end of this trial when you have to decide whether the state has proven to you that Chandler Halderson killed his parents, because they simply don't know what happened. They just told you what they think happened. We heard a lot of detail of the before and a lot of detail of the after, but 1 or 2 simple sentences, and then he killed his parents. The evidence will show you that there is a gap of evidence when it comes to that time frame. And your job is to listen to this evidence as jurors. Listen to the evidence from the perspective of a juror, not from the perspective of a story corroborator, corroborating the state's story.
We could also corroborate your story if you have one. Jurors also kind of are story corroborators. Isn't that sort of what they do? Is determine based on the facts whether the story makes sense? I press on.
The role of being a juror is a different role than being a person. And that
Great. Just great. The role of being a juror is different than the role of being a person. Now, I'd like to remind everyone at this point that it's a jury of your peers, which are people. But there's a difference between being a juror and being a person, which means I necessarily am asking you to stop being a person. Okay?
That may sound strange, but it is. I think of when I went to law school way back in 1991, and there's a big part of me that feels I went into law school a human being who lived my life feeling things emotionally and relating to things emotionally, and I left law school a really different person.
Not really sure you're selling anyone on the practice of law. I went into law school as a person with emotions and feelings. And by the end of it, well, geez, I got rid of all those things. Definitely selling the jury on this proposition. Okay, let's sell some more.
I learned how to be very logical,
Uh-huh.
to apply facts, first to assemble facts, and then to apply these facts to the law as I learned it. Facts, laws, and rules, plus logic. That's your role here as a juror.
Yeah.
Don't assume anything.
Well, at this point, what I'm assuming is that everything that the government just said is things that they're going to say. So, okay.
Assumption is the mother of all mistakes.
Uh-huh.
The story that you just heard assumes that Chandler Halderson killed his parents.
Yes, it does. Deep commentary from the defense lawyer over here. That's just a really brilliant observation. The story that you just heard assumes that Chandler murdered the parents, which he's on trial for by me, the prosecutor. Right. That is the linchpin of this entire story. He committed the murder. Yes, that is a thing we are trying to prove. Thanks. That's great. More.
You cannot assume anything.
Uh-huh.
Your job is to presume that Chandler Halderson is innocent because he today is under the benefit of the presumption of innocence.
I had the presumption of innocence when this case started an hour ago. But, that presumption has been somewhat impacted at this point.
An assumption is reaching a conclusion without knowing all the information.
What information don't I know that if I knew would change things? Are you going to tell me this mystical information?
A presumption is a principle that we all must follow. We must presume him innocent, and we must keep that presumption unless and until the state proves every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
No.
It's not easy in a high-profile case. It's not easy in a case where we all know we're going to see evidence that is disturbing. But you must find a way, like I did in law school, to put your emotions, put your feelings aside, and use the logical part of who you are. Be a juror.
This is my favorite part of our argument. Altogether. Let me translate that for you. What she just said is, please be like me. Burn out all the emotion you have inside. All that emotion and sympathy and empathy and all that, you need to just burn it in a catalyst. Burn it out inside. Become cold and dark inside. Get rid of all that emotion. Be like me. Burn out the emotion from within. Okay. Good strategy.
Assemble the facts, know the law, and apply the logic without letting your feelings or emotions get in the way. And for each of you, you might have a different way of doing that. But I'm asking you here today to dig deep and find out how that will work for you so that you can presume my client innocent.
I presumed it an hour ago.
Now, I'm not going to have a fancy PowerPoint here, and I'm probably not even going to talk very much longer.
Because I have nothing to say.
But as I comment to you on the evidence that you're going to see in this case, I want to highlight a couple of things. First of all, and the judge already indicated this in some of the preliminary instructions, lack of evidence is evidence just as much as any evidence that is presented to you in the court.
Lack of evidence. What? Lack of evidence is just as good as the evidence you're going to hear in this courtroom. Really? So the very fact that I have no evidence is just as good as having evidence. Well, that's a relief. I now can weigh the evidence I have against the complete lack of evidence. I can weigh it again against the non-existent evidence. I believe in Russell's teapot. I believe in Russell's teapot. I have so much non-evidence for Russell's teapot, it's insane. I've got loads of non-evidence for Russell's teapot. I believe in Russell's teapot from the non-evidence. Super duper.
Lack of evidence is evidence just as much as any evidence that is presented to you in the courtroom. Look for what's missing. Look for alternate explanations. Because the second thing I want to tell you is that evidence of one thing is not necessarily evidence of another thing.
Yeah.
One fact here could mean a different fact here, but it also could mean 3 or 4 other facts. So
Please blatantly speculate, she says. Please blatantly speculate. This one fact here could mean this fact here, or it could mean 3 or 4 other things. Please speculate the other things into existence. It could be this thing, or it could be 2 or 3 other things that, somehow. Please speculate those other things into existence, says the defense lawyer. Good.
You have to avoid jumping to conclusions. And really dig deep and look at what this all means. You're going to notice that many of the facts, many of the witnesses aren't going to be hotly contested by the defense in this case.
Many of the facts and many of the witnesses are not going to be hotly contested by the defense in this case. She's not a miracle worker. She's not a miracle worker. She can't do something with nothing. So many of the facts and many of the witnesses are going to be uncontested, but that's okay. We still win, even though all those facts, because reasons. Okay.
And that goes back to what I was just saying. 12, 18, 100 reasonable people can look at a certain situation and form a different conclusion.
I am just hoping beyond all hope that one of you 12, 18, or 100 people will somehow come to a reasonable opinion, which, by the way, is kind of impossible because the word reasoned, I'd like to remind you, reasonable means reasoned, which means, based on reasons. So speculate the facts into existence is not necessarily reasonable, it seems to me, but...
And when you're talking about a system where you need to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt, you better make very sure that you're excluding all of the other things that these facts could mean.
What are these other possibilities? Just out of raw curiosity, would you like to tell me some of them? What are these other possibilities? I mean, you just keep saying that there are possibilities. Would you like to maybe I'm just lacking sufficient imagination, counselor. Maybe you could give me one or two to prime my thought process. Hey, maybe it could mean this thing. Ooh, what other thing could it be? Now, could it be potentially the reason that she's not giving you any is because she can't come up with anything that doesn't pass the laugh test. So she'll just say they're out there, but she won't tell you what they are because, they're not.
Because you just aren't going to know what happened.
I've got a pretty damn good idea.
Some about the before. You're going to know some about the after. But you're not going to know what happened in the Haldersons' home, who did it, what happened, how it went down, whether it was intentional or not, which is an element of homicide. You're just not going to know.
Okay, fine. Let's play this game. I like games. Let's play this game. Okay. Let's play the game. All right, Chandler did not murder his parents. Okay. It was somebody else. It was an accident for both of them. It was self-defense, justification. Okay. All right, sure. So it was somebody else. It was an accident for both of them at two different times, or it was self-defense for both of them at two different times. Okay, I accept your premise. Why then did Chandler then decide to react to this reality by cutting up his parents and feeding them into the fireplace and chopping them up and disposing of them in various places that he knew? Why, in response to this one-armed man / accident / justification, maybe it's a murder, maybe it's a double murder between the parents, they killed each other. Why, in response to that, did Chandler, decide, hey, you know what I should do at this point? I should chop up the bodies and feed them into the fire and dispose of them and get a tarp and some ice and stuff. Why is that the next logical step in the sequence? See, it seems to me that isn't the next logical step in the sequence. So it suggests the predicate is wrong. It doesn't suggest misadventure, doesn't suggest accident, doesn't suggest justification, doesn't suggest someone else, doesn't suggest mutual murder. It doesn't suggest those things, because any of those things, the next thing that flows is not going to be, let me chop up the bodies and feed them into the fireplace and then dispose of their bodies all over the greater parts of southern Wisconsin. So you see, that doesn't really flow. So the chopping and the fire and the disposing, somewhat suggestive, he did it. Yeah.
also going to not know how Bart and Krista would have reacted to these lies.
Whose lies? Yours or theirs?
That's never going to be explained to you. Why lying turns into murder, or how lying turns into murder.
Uh-huh.
Be sure to look for what you're not told.
Uh-huh.
Because that's evidence just as much as any evidence is.
Is it? I have to tell you quite honestly, it is literally not evidence under the rules of evidence. It is not evidence. Things you are not told are literally not evidence. In every possible sense, they're not evidence. Evidence is the things you hear in the courtroom. It is not the things you don't hear. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to resist some things in this case as jurors.
Uh-huh.
We already talked a little bit about proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Sure.
What that means is you must resist guessing. You must resist speculation.
See, this is exactly why I can't do what you were saying earlier, right? This is exactly why you're saying I can't do it earlier, and exactly why the not evidence I can't consider. I can't resort to guessing. I can't resort to speculation. You are correct, which is exactly why the non-evidence I can't consider, which is exactly why the 300 other possibilities I can't consider. I am not allowed to resort to guessing and speculation. You are correct.
You must resist storytelling and only convict when it's proven, or if it's proven, which it won't be, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to ask you to resist losing your objectivity.
I'm pretty freaking objective.
Objectivity may be hard for people in this case because of the graphic nature of what you've just been told or what you're going to see. But you need to resist losing that objectivity. Commit to being jurors, dispassionate, logical. Don't be swayed by fear.
Fear of what?
And I ask you to resist any pressure you might feel to convict Mr. Halderson of murder in this case. It's a little unorthodox, but I'm going to tell you, at the end of this case, Attorney Vera and I may stand before you here and say, you know what? They did convict him of this, but what evidence do you have of murder?
Yeah, go with that strategy. Go with that strategy. Yeah, you know, they did convince you. There is enough evidence that we will concede the dismemberment of the body and the lying to the police and stuff, but there's not enough for the murder. All we know is that he dismembered the body and spread them around. We have no idea who did the murder. Could have been anyone. Mm-hmm.
I like to talk about the Constitution, probably because I'm a defense lawyer.
Please, tell us about the Constitution.
But I think as jurors, as people coming into the system who aren't dealing with this every day, like we are here in the courtroom, you have to remember how important the Constitution is, how important the presumption of innocence is for Mr. Halderson, and how important proof beyond a reasonable doubt is. It's the highest standard we...
David Brown's, Eric Tolfison said, you shit pretty hard on her in her opening. What argument would you make given the facts? I've got nothing better. I've got nothing better. I got nothing. She has nothing. I have nothing. I have nothing. The sort of last refuge for the defense attorney is always that you can make the state prove their case. So here's how you would do this slightly more effectively, although it doesn't really go anywhere, but it's slightly better to try to go down this road. So what you would do instead, you say something like, members of the jury, my name is whatever, and I represent the defendant, whose name is whatever. You have just heard from the prosecutor some very shocking information. This information is probably disturbing to you. It is disturbing to me as well. And when we see such disturbing information, we immediately have a very visceral reaction, as we should. Because this is so disturbing, it goes to a core part of ourselves that demands retribution for this evil. And it is very easy for us to do that. It is natural for us to do that. But the important thing that we have here in the trial is the consideration of facts. And the state must prove their case to their burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. I am going to challenge the state as to its case. I believe their evidence was flawed. I believe they latched onto a suspect early and didn't do a full-throated investigation. I believe that they worked towards a narrative they were convinced of early and didn't do the job necessary to find other avenues. And when you are listening to these witnesses, you should look for gaps in their knowledge, because there will be gaps in their knowledge that I will make clear on the cross-examination. Things they didn't know, things they didn't observe, things they didn't hear, that they don't have the piece of the puzzle. The government is going to try to use the pure outrage of the visuals, the pure outrage of the graphical images, to overwhelm the fact that they don't have the people to testify as to how those images were photos. And this shocking, disturbing story you've heard from the prosecutor is something that they will have to prove each and every step of the way. And when we get to the end of this case, ladies and gentlemen, you will find that their case, although inflammatory, is ultimately not backed by sufficient evidence to tie my client to key parts of the offense. If they cannot prove even a single element of any charge, you must acquit. You'll hear that from the judge later. And I will show you the parts of the charges that they have failed to meet their burden. And from there, we will ask for a verdict of not guilty. That's slightly better. I'm doing this off the top of my head, so it's not ideal, but it's slightly better. It doesn't come across as so pleady. It doesn't come across as so beggy. It also makes the prosecution make them look like they're tricksters, right? And they're trying to trick you with the inflammatory. And I'm going to be the one that's going to show you that it's a trick and there's nothing behind the curtain, and that they haven't been able to prove each and every element. So it doesn't come off as begging. It doesn't come off as pleading. It doesn't come off as, but please, yeah. So that something like that, I'd work on it if I were doing it for real. That's slightly better. And that's the best you got, I think. So I don't know how much better that what sounded, but I think it was better because it doesn't sound so beggy. It didn't sound so pleady. And it accuses the prosecution because it's a good way of weakening their evidence, right? What's bad? Well, the bad evidence is all the photos. Okay, so how do I make that work for me? By saying it's inflammatory, by saying that they're using these inflammatory images which are designed to poke at the primal parts of your primordial brain and overwhelm all reason to want in a sort of vicious way of tearing apart without any reason. And we need to be better. My job is to show you the magic trick, to show you that they're using the pure inflammatory passion rather than cold hard facts, to show the weaknesses of their case and to show you that each and every element of the charges is not sustainable, and therefore there's only one right verdict, a verdict of not guilty. Also, I think it was a mistake for her, because she said it at the start and she said it at the end. I think it was a mistake for her to say he didn't do it. Right? That's a mistake. That's a mistake. She made that claim. He didn't commit the murders. You can't do that. I mean, I guess you can. It's just not a good idea. Because you're making, first of all, you're starting your opening with a statement that seems patently ridiculous. You can't start your opening by saying, my client didn't commit the murders. Because they just heard for an hour and 10 minutes how he did and had 15 minutes to think about it. So you can't start off a statement, your opening with a statement that belies what is in the jury's mind at this point. Because they're going to think it's ridiculous. They're going to think it's patently absurd. So you can't say that. What you can say is that that the state will not be able to make their case. And I'm here to show you the state does not make their case, and they're trying to ride on the fumes of pure passion through inflammatory pictures to try to convince you of something that just fundamentally cannot be shown to be true. So it's a slightly better version of what she's trying to do, I think. So, A+ in trial advocacy, a little bit, yeah, a little bit, yeah. So it's better. It's better.
And it was created and perseveres to this day for this very reason. When someone is on trial for the most serious crime possible, and every little thing they do, every little lie they might have told is blown up and thrown against someone.
I really don't think in your opening argument you want to remind the jury that your client is a liar.
That's when proof beyond a reasonable doubt matters. You jurors, not the sheriff's department, not Mr. Brown or Ms. Raymond or me or the judge, get to decide this case. Individually, you all get a vote. You all get to make your own decision. I simply ask that you remember your role as jurors, that you find a way to stay objective, that you look for the key questions, the key facts that aren't...
Begging. It's begging. Stay objective. Look for the key facts. Begging. I'm going to show you the key facts. Or not even that. I'm going to show you they don't have the key facts. I'm not begging anything. I'm just telling you what I'm going to do. You know, don't look for the key facts. Keep your mind open. You know, it's begging. How about instead of that, how about I will show you the weaknesses in the prosecution's key facts. I will show you they do not have key facts as to essential elements of the charges. I will show you they have weaknesses that are fundamental to their charges. They do not have evidence sufficient to make each and every element, and I will show you that they're using inflammatory pictures to try to convince you that something's there when it's plainly not there. They're trying to pull a magic trick on you, and I'm going to reveal the secret. No begging, no pleading. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to show you. Confident, dominant, better.
Answered, and that you hold the government to this high burden of proof. If you do those things, if you can resist these things, you will reach the right conclusion. Chandler Halderson did not murder his parents.
See, again, she ends the same way she began. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. It's too much. It's what you sometimes call as a lawyer call being too clever by half. It's too clever by half. It's too much. Chandler Halderson did not kill his parents. The jury's thinking, of course they did. Nothing you said in your entire opening convinced them otherwise. Zero things that you said convinced them otherwise. You just pleaded and begged them to look for reasons, and then you told them this, but you didn't convince them of jack shit. You can't go out and say Chandler Halderson did not commit this murder, because the jury just heard. They just heard for an hour, 10 minutes, and had 15 minutes to think about it, about all the reasons that he did. You can't make that statement. It's too jarring. And you can, not for least of reasons, you have nothing to back it up with. You have nothing to back it up with except for, please keep your minds open and remember the Constitution and remember, due process and stuff. You got nothing. You can't come in with a statement that sharp, that's so contra to everything they heard, and you have nothing to back it up with. And you start and end your opening with this statement. It's way too much. Way too much. But you can always, as a defense attorney, it might be your last step, but it's the thing you have left in the bottom of the bag. The thing you have left in the bottom of this bag is that you can always put the state to their burden. Always. That's always an ethical position. You can always put the state to their burden. Make them prove the case. And you can say, they can't prove the case. They don't have it. They're using these pictures, and they're using words like mutilate, and they're using pictures of blood, and they're using pictures of hacksaws, and they're using pictures of rifles, and they're using pictures of a fireplace to inflame you, to anger you, to excite that part of you that is seeking a righteous fury for some sort of cosmic justice to balance the scales. They're using it to inflame you, to demand from you this, and to cover for the fact that they are guessing. They don't have evidence as to the fundamental aspects. They cannot make their burden. And that's off the top of my head, but that's kind of what I got. That's always always an option. Always an option. And then you make them work for it. And then you find weaknesses in each witness. If you can. Their ability to observe things, their ability to remember things, why they decided to do particular things, what was going on there. Would it be considered ineffective assistance of counsel? No. Ineffective assistance of counsel is a very hard trigger. No, I just don't think it's optimal. But ineffective assistance of counsel is, no, I don't think it's ineffective assistance of counsel. But, yeah. So that's kind of what I think about all of it. And then as a defense attorney, you just, because you've had discovery, so you know what the witnesses will testify to what they can't testify to. So you can highlight all the things they can't testify about. It's like, you didn't see this. You didn't see this. Right? You didn't see who killed the parents, did you? You didn't see any hacking up of bodies, did you? Don't know who did that. Didn't see so forth and so on, right? So you can bring to attention things they didn't see and didn't observe. And for things they did see and did observe, you can always try to challenge their ability to see it and observe it. What were the environmental conditions at the time? Was it a fast look? Was it a slow look? And try to whatever. And see if any of that works. But yeah, I don't think he was offered a plea deal. I don't know for sure, but I don't think he was offered one. The prosecution's case is unbeatable. I didn't say I was going to win, remember? I didn't say I was going to win. I think I was pretty clear on that. I think I just said, I can make this slightly better. But I can't win. There's no way. There's no way I can win. I'm not a miracle worker, man. But, I can try. And try to be strong and, try to tell them that, all those things and, good stuff. Yeah. Fingerprints on the knives. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. Yeah, like fingerprints on the knives. Fingerprints on the gun. We know it's his gun. His blood, maybe, in some of this stuff. I don't know. Fingerprints on the tarp. Yeah, there's probably a bunch of forensics. I could always challenge the fingerprints. Sometimes you can have fun with that. DNA is much harder, but you can sometimes get somewhere with their fingerprints. Yeah. Yeah, it's marginally better. It's marginally better. It's not a winning position. The prosecution was very good. Very good. And what I have is not a winning position. But I can make them work for it, and maybe they'll make a mistake. Or maybe, maybe they'll make a mistake. Maybe they'll forget to put something on, or maybe, something will happen that will somehow change the odds for me during the trial, right? So I'm just hoping that something's going to happen somewhere that somehow will let me get to where I need to be in the end. But it's definitely the worst position to be in. Yeah, witnesses freaking out on the stand. Witnesses somehow not seeming credible when they testify. The girlfriend in particular, she might be very, very angry. Make her seem like a bitter ex-girlfriend. I might be able to get there. Like a bitter ex-girlfriend. So she's, bitter. Check her credibility a little bit. These are some ideas I have without seeing the file. But yeah, it's workable. Yeah, it's workable. Challenge the assertion of the prosecution the girlfriend is totally innocent. Yeah, you could do that. You could try that, depending on what the evidence allows for, maybe. You want to be careful with that, though, because you don't want to, as the defense attorney, pose an alternate theory that isn't sufficiently plausible for the jury. So, what you're ethically able to present as a defense attorney is lower than what you probably should, because if you make a allegation that is ethically supportable but is not really factually supportable, and they don't believe it, the jury's going to hate you, right? They're not gonna. You can't come with weak sauce, right? So if you're going to say the girlfriend did it or something, you have to have enough confidence in that outcome for that to be an actual plausible consideration, as opposed to like mere technical sufficiency, in my view at least. So I'd be careful with the idea of going after the girlfriend and saying maybe she did it. It's not a bad idea. I just be very careful with it, because I can't burn what little credibility I have by making an allegation that is going to be dismissed by the jury, because I'll just be done. So their sentencing is no difference if he pleads versus go to trial. Yeah, he has no incentive to plead. Yeah, he has no incentive to plead because he'd get the max. He has no incentive to plead. Something could happen it can't get any worse, right? I mean, if he pleads guilty, it's 100%. If he goes through trial, something might happen. So it's, and he can't face any more time or any less, so he has no disincentive to go to trial. So, except I suppose the only real disincentive is that like all the truth will come out for public display. But if you're in prison for the rest of your life, how much do you really care? So yeah, forestalling the inevitable. Yeah. So yeah, I don't. The defense attorney seemed weak to me. She seemed weak, and it's understandable. She knows. I think she made a total mistake by saying though that my client didn't commit the murder, because she can't sell that, and she knows it, and it comes off on her face. But say, hey, they can't prove their case. Yeah, say it made him do it, has a better chance. I agree. Yeah. So thank you for all the super chats today. Thank you for the $169.23 worth of super chats. Let me read your super chats, and then I'm going to sign off on stream, because I had a very stressful day today. And yeah, so $10 Canadian from Forever Cuber. Hey Kurt, I hope you're spelling your name correctly. Keep up the great videos. Thank you. 10 New Zealand dollars from Luke Pearson. In regards to defense opening, if they stand in close and go, you know what, we think you can convict on this lesser crime, would that be good ineffective assistance counsel appeal? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If you think the jury is going to obviously convict on something lesser, then you might be doing yourself a favor by conceding the ground, because it builds up some additional credibility for you arguing not guilty for the higher thing. So if you think the jury is, for absolute sure going to convict on the lower stuff, there is a tactical consideration where you would concede it to the jury. It's like, yeah, they proved that beyond a reasonable doubt. We concede that, because your honor and integrity is a huge factor to the jury. So if you concede the lesser ground, it buys you a little bit of credibility on the upper ground. So there's a reason to do it. It's not inherently ineffective assistance counsel. Of course, you need your client's permission to do that, which makes it problematic, because you can't argue your client is guilty if they won't let you. So if you may not be able to concede the ground, right? Because it's up to your client to plead, and you can't go to the jury you can't say to the jury, well, they won that one, because you're basically pleading guilty. So you may not be able to do that without your client's permission, but there's a reason to do it. $10 from Richard Freeman. Kurt, check out Voice Meter Banana for auto leveling. It's free donationware. Streamer I listen to says he uses it and it's great. Well, when I'm streaming here in OBS, the audio is fine. I think the audio levels I have now are great. It's just when I'm trying, and you can't put Voice Meter as a plugin for StreamYards, but thanks anyway. 5 Canadian dollars for Forever Cuber. This seems like a slam dunk case for prosecutors. I would not envy being on the side of defense. I feel that. $20 from Phil Harrigan. Prince never used a smartphone and always paid in cash. When he OD'd, the police had no idea how to investigate what happened. $10 from Grimm's Bar. The phone in foils like the lemon juice bank robbery. Please now tell me you know that story. I do. Where the bank robber put lemon juice on his face because that's invisible ink, so they thought the cameras couldn't see him. Yeah. $10 Canadian from Forever Cuber. All Chandler's tricks seem to take from various TV shows, only they don't work. Well, he could have tried harder. $10 from William Andrews. This is just for playing RimWorld. Well, thank you. $20 from Far Out Aliens. I gotta go research crypto charts. My rubbernecking interest tanks are filling up. Peace out, Uncivil. $5 Canadian from Blue. Woman dancing. Thank you, Uncivilian Kurt, for covering this. Vulcan salute. 100 points. Thumbs up. $20 from Alistar Sebastian. This was a tough one. Have a beer or two on me. Well, thank you very much. $5 Canadian from Forever Cuber. Do we know anything about the judge presiding? Not in particular, no. $2 from Cheryl Fidel. Congratulations on your sponsor. Thank you very much. $2 from Blurry Lights. Did the state not offer a deal here? Probably not, to be honest. $10 from Matt Hagen. If a politician is on trial, does that mean they have to be tried by lizards? No, but nice. $4.99 from Eric Tolfson. Thank you for answering. Much appreciated. $2 from Dr. Fox. 2000. Nick did it. 100%. The nose is guilty. $5 from Nuvi. Chandler should have hired Rosie O'Neill. And $10 Canadian from Marcel Defour. At this point, Satan made him do it stands a better chance. Maybe. I'm going to sign off for now. This has been a fairly long stream, and yeah, he's going down hard. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for all the support. Don't forget to check out our sponsor. The link is at the top above, ara.com/uncivillaw if you're interested in credit fraud protection, identity theft protection, and other things like that, which if you have your identity stolen, it can be a massive pain in the ass to undo. So you probably want the professional help on that one, to be honest. And it'd probably be helpful to have it in advance so it doesn't cost you as much if you try to buy it afterwards, like, insurance. And anyway, I hope all's well. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers and goodbye.